All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock, so we're going to get this show on the road here. Thanks for joining us for our final webinar of Lubruary 2018. It's been a pretty cool month, lots of great participation. So clearly, lubrication was a topic that was worth devoting a whole month to. So if this is your first webinar of the month, welcome. If you've been popping in on a couple of these, welcome back. And we're excited to round out the month with Eric Rasmusson from Generation Systems. They've got the Lubit software, so I'm sure he'll be talking a little bit about that as well. But today, his main topic, he's going to be talking about lubrication, hidden complexity, untapped opportunity. So pretty cool way to round out the month, I think. Before I toss things over to Eric, just a couple housekeeping items. So just like we've been doing all month, we are recording this, so we'll get this up on our website later this afternoon. If you are interested in any of the other recordings from the webinars we did earlier in the month, they're up there. But certainly if you need help finding them, just shoot me an email or give us a call and we'll point you in the right direction. So wanted to make sure everybody knows that. And also, we definitely welcome questions, so you can type those in throughout the presentation today, and I'll be keeping an eye on those, and I'll get those questions tossed over to Eric as it makes sense throughout the presentation, and then of course we'll save most of that for the end. So definitely feel free to interact with us in that way. And just always like to point out we are doing this live, so bear with us if we have any audio issues or any technical glitches. We'll try and get those things resolved just as quickly as we can. So with that, I'm going to take just a quick second here to change the screen over to Eric. And Eric, we'll let you take it away.
Great. Hey, Maureen, real quick, can you, you can see my screen now?
We just see the webinar screen, so we're not seeing your PowerPoint just yet. It says we're waiting to view it. So you got to hit you should have seen the little pop-up. There it is. There you are. Perfect.
Okay, and are you seeing a whole frame on a slide, or are you seeing two slides?
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Nope, we're seeing.
I want to make sure you're not getting my presenter view.
Yep, no worries. Good. We're ready to rock and roll.
Thank you, Maureen, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. My name is Eric Rasmusson, as Maureen mentioned, and I'm from Generation Systems. And we're the creators of Lubit. And Lubit is software that helps our customers profit by changing the way lubrication gets done. So let me give you just a little bit more background. And that is, I'm not an actual maintenance professional. I'm a software engineer by trade. And so my hope today is that my outside perspective will bring new light to a facet or two of lubrication. And give me a minute while I make this part of the screen go away. There we go. Okay. So first off, why should we even care about lubrication? And at least for me, it's because of the impact reliability engineers and other maintenance professionals say it's having on reliability. In fact, according to machinerylubrication.com, 80% deal with lubrication-related failures. And in a recent online maintenance conference, over 85% of the attendees saw a strong correlation between failures and reactive work due to lubrication issues. Now, just in talking with customers and attending the maintenance conferences here are some of the reasons we've learned to be common, some of the issues we've learned to be common across many organizations. Repeated equipment failure, downtime losses, production losses and downtime, excessive energy consumption, technician productivity, environmental impact, high lubricant consumption, and often maintenance being in a sort of ongoing catch-up mode. So is it possible that lubrication can prove helpful in resolving these issues and breaking these cycles? Well, let's see what these same conference attendees had to say. The answer was resoundingly yes, with over 65% identifying the benefits that could be received from a lubrication program as considerable. So maybe we could throw a couple what ifs out there. So what if we could say increase efficiency and reduce the cost of lubricating, and maybe apply learnings from other organizations, maybe something that's outside of manufacturing itself? And can we empower personnel in performing lubrication to help them be successful? And can we use technology to streamline the business of lubrication? And most importantly, can we focus on what reliability is all about, really, and that is protecting our profit-producing assets and bringing an increase in the earnings and reduce capital expenditures. So, as Maureen mentioned, today I'm talking about lubrication, hidden complexity, untapped opportunity. So I've got 4 main points, and that will be taking a look into the difficulties that are hidden in the very complexities of lubrication itself. Next will be looking at a few common approaches that can actually undermine success. Also, what can we do differently to improve our results with lubrication? Can technology help? Are there practices that can help? Can technology simplify rather than just adding more complexity? And then last, we'll take a look at a few successful outcomes, actual results from various plants and industries. Before I begin, I just want to clarify and give you a definition, and that is a job versus tasks. So this may not be the right way to say it, but this is sort of the lexicon I use. And so a job tends to stand out on its own. It's typically for a single piece of equipment. It can be of longer duration, several hours, maybe even up to several days. And it can require multiple trades or crafts. Tasks, on the other hand, are best performed with other tasks. And these tasks will carry across many different pieces of equipment. And yet each one is of rather short duration, even just a few minutes, say checking a sight glass or putting a grease gun to a grease fitting. So I just bring that up because you'll hear me use job and tasks, and having some common definition can be helpful. Okay, let's roll. Here's our first point: difficulties hidden in the complexities of lubrication. So I'm going to start by saying, what is good lubrication? Well, the odds are high that you're familiar with this statement, these 5 R's of lubrication. I think it's a great distillation of what lubrication successfully actually is. Some even call it a best practice statement for lubrication. And I like it because it's easy to understand, especially for managers and other non-maintenance professionals. A little bit of a sidebar here, I do worry sometimes that it's almost too simple and understates the difficulty of lubricating well. But again, I will refer to these 5 R's at a time or two going forward in the presentation. But basically, in summary, the right lubricant, the right place, right time, right amount, and right technique, or could also be said as job steps or procedure. Okay, let's start with an example. Let's take a plant diagram and grab one piece of equipment. So a conveyor in this instance, with its various lubricated components, such as a motor, gearbox, shaft bearings, coupling, and some rolls. Now, each of these dots you see represent a different task to perform. These are places where those 5 R's we just looked at need to be performed. Now, in this example, each color represents a different specification for the work that needs to be performed. So things like the lube product will vary, the frequency will vary, the amount of lubricant will vary. Now, one special thing to note is if you look over on the left, we've got the different shaded green dots, and those all are for the gearbox. But interestingly, some components, lubricated components, can have multiple tasks. So maybe in this instance, you would have a level check, sample, drain, and fill. Okay, so I think you get the idea. There's some complexity and depth to the information that you need for even just one piece of equipment. So now, in your mind's eye, let's take this conveyor and drop it back down onto that diagram of the entire plant floor. How many dots or specifications or tasks, whatever you want to call them, are we talking about? How many dots would need to be covering this whole plant-wide diagram? Well, let's see. Okay, we're in the lubrication software business. As you can imagine, we've seen a fair amount of lubrication-related data, lube surveys, lube specs, whatever you care to call it. And we've done analytics on this information here. And here's what we found. Given a specific number of equipment, say from 750 to 7,500, depending on size of plant, we can reasonably project the number of lube points a plant will have. So in this case, from a little over 2,500 to a little over 26,000. And then from these number of lube points, we can reasonably project the number of tasks to be defined. So in this case, we're seeing in a small plant, there might be over 5,000 different lubrication specifications or colored dots that need to be defined. In a large plant, that could be well over 50,000. Now, not only these have to be defined, but an interesting point is that we need to keep these current and accurate, because as we know, with life, the one certain thing is change. Okay, going back to the conveyor example, maybe we can quantify the amount of work that needs to be done. So we've got the number of specifications that we need, the number of details that we're tracking and need to take care of and manage, but we haven't actually talked about going out and doing the work. So, you all get this, but weekly tasks need to be performed 52 times per year. Monthly tasks need to be performed 12 times per year. Well, if we quantify these visits based on frequency for our conveyor, that single conveyor can require over 60 visits on an annual basis. Okay, now going back to our entire plant metrics or analytics, let's do the math and quantify the amount of work, the number of tasks that need to be done over 1 year. Okay, small plant, 40,000 plus tasks. Large plant, well over 400,000 tasks. This is the number of lubrication tasks that one way or the other, plants of various sizes need to perform annually, from 40,000 to over 400,000. These are sizable numbers. And so how does that list of R's that we just looked at apply here? Well, the most important one is the right place, because you can't just sit at a desk and do these tasks. Somebody has to go out into the plant and perform this work. Lubrication can be one of the, if not the, most task or activity intensive maintenance discipline in the plant. Now, one side note, we have a customer that's currently managing over 700,000 lubrication activities and related things like breathers and filtration and the sorts on an annual basis. Okay, to summarize my first point, when it comes to lubrication, there are a couple key factors that set it apart. And one, as we saw with all our colored dots scattered across the plant, is that level of detail that's required. The other aspect is the sheer number of tasks to be performed, the amount of work to be performed, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of tasks, visits out into the plant to perform the R's on an annual basis. Okay, moving on to the second point here. Common approaches that can actually undermine success. First, maybe not a common approach, but it's a misconception. And I hear often that lubrication is simple. Well, it's just a grease gun on a fitting. How hard could that be? Well, hopefully that look we just took into the complexities helps dispel this misconception. Another common misconception is anyone can do lubrication. Yet that's really not true. And even if we just factor in contamination control, having knowledge is a great thing. So in order to be successful, people performing lubrication need to have proper training, tools, and information. So along these lines, here's a couple of quotes that I really enjoy. Some expert opinion. In the hands of a worker not trained in its use, a power grease gun is a lethal weapon, for equipment that is. Terry Wireman. And machines don't just die, they're murdered. Jim Fitch. So much for the idea that just anyone can do lubrication. So this may be a little controversial, but another common approach that can be hindering is using the PM system for lubrication. Now, first off, let me be clear here. I'm not picking a fight with the PM systems in the EAM and CMMS systems. In fact, these PM systems are a vital part of any effective maintenance and reliability program. But unfortunately, the typical PMs for using PMs for lubrication and spreadsheets as well just do not provide much opportunity for effective and efficient work logistics. So let's see why, taking a cue from a business outside manufacturing. Package express delivery. So some of the world's best logistics experts are organizations such as Federal Express, UPS, and DHL. So let's see what we can learn. We'll also see if some of this applies to industrial lubrication. But first, we're going to have to understand the express delivery view of things. And I apologize, but it's going to take a few slides to lay this out. So I just ask that you hang in here with me. Okay, the first key thing I need to share with you is a term that's used in that industry, and that's called service level. And simply put, it's what level of service you select when you go to ship a package. So overnight, second day air, 3-day saver, or ground. So the more you're willing to spend, the faster the package gets there. Now, this service level is critical to determining how the package is actually transported. Does it go on a plane? Does it have to go tonight on a plane? Or can it go on a truck? And it's also used to determine when the package is due to arrive. So it's pretty straightforward. The service level is used to determine the delivery date. Simple formula, as you can see. Okay, let's take a specific example. I want to ship a package to Topeka, Kansas today, and I'm willing to pay for 2-day air. So that means it's going to come due this Friday, a couple days from now. That's my promised delivery date. So as we can see, service level and delivery date are essential to getting the package to Topeka on time. It affects all kinds of things, including the routing. And now consider the number of packages delivered each day, and these logistics that are used to make this happen are immense and impressive. But now that I've sort of laid out this point, and I'm going to just take the route of simplicity and to save some time, and we're going to skip over the details of these logistics, and we're going to fast forward, jump into my time machine, and we're going forward to Friday. Okay, so it's early Friday AM in Topeka, and the package is now at the local depot. And really, all we need is a truck and a driver. So this process of delivering the package to the local customer, from the depot to the local customer, is by some referred to as the final mile. Oh, and it brings a whole new set of logistics challenges that differ from what got the package to Topeka. Like things like our driver is going to need to know what packages to deliver where. So keeping in mind that service level and delivery date were critical in getting this package to Topeka on time, let's take all the packages due for delivery today and give our driver 4 different delivery lists, 1 per service level. Okay, here are the lists. So we have 1 list for overnight, we have 1 list for 2-day air, another list for 3-day saver, and another list for ground. Makes sense, doesn't it? But maybe we look a little closer. Now, if we look at some of the addresses in these different delivery lists, we'll see some commonalities. Like there's a couple things for West Elm Street on Overnight and Ground. You know, there's different addresses, but it's along the same street. And so it creates a perplexing problem for our driver. Where does he start? Which list? Which package should he deliver first? Which package and address comes second after that? And the third, and so on. It can actually be pretty befuddling. So the question here, the key question is, how much consideration to logistics and efficiency do you see in these delivery lists? To be honest, I'm not seeing much. So what is wrong with our delivery lists? Well, the problem is they're grouped by service level. So when it comes to final mile, delivery date remains a critical factor. And there are many factors that go into optimizing how the final delivery truck is loaded and how the route is delivered. But interestingly, service level is not one of them. Service level, which was essential to transporting our package to Topeka, would now actually be an obstacle, becomes an obstacle if used to group packages for final mile delivery. It can present an obstacle the driver actually must try to overcome. So in the express package delivery business, the goal is to optimize efficiency and reduce costs. So each day we're involving the same cities, streets, trucks, and drivers, and yet the stops and packages will vary. So how can we solve this problem? Well, one of the things that the package express delivery business does is they create optimized delivery routes. And then the stops are sequenced in a logical driving order. So you can see things like West Elm Street at the beginning there is grouped together. And we go from West Lincoln Avenue then to East Lincoln Avenue and so on. And as you can see today near the bottom of the list, there's a stop at 21 West Jackson Lane. Now, if there's nothing for that address tomorrow, the truck just simply passes that address by. So by now, you're probably asking, and I appreciate your patience, what does this have to do with industrial lubrication? Okay, let's see what similarities we can find. On the left, we have that critical information for express delivery, and we'll have the correlations on the right for lubrication. So ship date correlates to what we're familiar with in lubrication and maintenance as the last done date. And then service level correlates with what we're more familiar with, and that's the frequency. And delivery date correlates with, again, what we're much more familiar with, and that is the due date. So we can create a very similar formula, very similar examples, and similar to package delivery with the last done date and frequency, we can automatically determine what the next due date is so we can be sure the work is performed at the correct time. So we're all familiar with work orders, and they communicate the lubrication work needing to be done for a period of time. And so for this example, let's take next week's lubrication work. So what do these work orders look like? Well, often with PM work orders, they're a collection of similar tasks grouped by frequency. So in this case, we can see there are 3 different work orders that have come due. They're calling for relubrication of various components with EP2 grease. So the first work order on the left there lists several 2-week tasks. Then the second work order in the middle lists a number of 1-month tasks. And then the third work order on the right contains several 3-month tasks that need to be performed. Now, of course, that's not all we'll have. There'll be other lubrication tasks for other types of components and lubricants that will come due this week as well. So there's going to be additional work orders. So now let's say it's next Monday morning and the technician or tradesman is handed a stack of such work orders. Where does he begin? Should each work order be done one at a time, returning back to the office multiple times for the next printout? Or should he grab multiple work orders, say all the ones for the EP2 grease, and kind of manipulate them as he goes along in a single trip? Well, if this latter is true, which EP2 work order would he start with? And which task would he do second or third? Again, you've got tasks representing components that are scattered across a reasonable area of the plant. So that same question that I asked of delivery lists grouped by service level can apply here as well. How much consideration to logistics and efficiency and workflow are contained in work orders where the tasks are grouped by frequency? And again, I would argue not a whole lot. So with lubrication delivery, shall we call it, via work orders, once the due dates are determined, is the frequency of any real benefit? Once we know what work needs to be done today, is it an effective way to organize and execute lubrication work? Or, as with the package delivery, could it be an obstacle, one your team fights to overcome each week? And again, I'm not here to pick a fight over PMs and work orders, as they are great with the equipment level jobs they were designed for. On the other hand, lubrication is different. It requires considerable more details, as we saw with our colored dots, and we'll have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of tasks to perform each year. A more logistic and efficient approach can make a significant difference. A little later, we'll explore some more on how combining multiple PMs onto a hybrid route can gain benefits similar to the final mile package delivery. Okay, back to this week's work orders. So let's say the week is over and our lubrication work orders have been turned in and need to be closed out. This could maybe be another limitation of a typical PM work order. So what happens in this example when some of the tasks on the work order did not get completed? Well, many of these systems don't support this level of detail. So often the only recourse is to mark the work order as completed. But what about those uncompleted tasks? Well, we've sort of lost. They're sort of lost. And in the software business, we call this information loss. And for obvious reasons, it's not considered a good thing. So the unfortunate results in this case is the system no longer represents the true state of affairs for the components that were missed. And the sad thing is this problem can compound week after week, depending on the amount of tasks that are missed. So to be clear, what's lost track of? Well, what we've lost track of is the items or tasks that were not done. Okay, so now let me paint a scenario for you. If there was a bug in your work order system that was randomly closing a number of corrective work orders each week, even though the work was not done, what would the impact be to your maintenance organization? Would such information loss be tolerated, or would fixes be demanded of the vendor? Yet for some reason, similar type information loss is often just accepted for lubrication work. And let's touch quickly on history. What about history when it comes to these blocked PMs and work orders for lubrication tasks? If there's a failure of a component, do you have the detailed history you need to do failure analysis? Can you get at it quickly? Or is that history spread across numerous work orders, each involving different sets of equipment and components as well as the one we're interested in? And then let's also consider that issue of information loss. is the history even reliable? Another difficulty and limitation can be in optimizing frequencies. A typical PM approach can prevent us from positively impacting successful management of lubrication. I mean, let's see what's involved. So often, changing a task, say from 1 week frequency to a 1 month frequency, is a convoluted procedure. It could be finding that right PM that has the 1 week tasks, and then finding the correct equipment and component from within that and deleting that task off. Then we have to go find the correct 1 month PM, edit that, and then re-enter the equipment component and task information. Now, I don't know about you guys, but at my company, we're sort of the feeling that if change and process improvement is not simple and straightforward, it's not likely to be done. Okay, there's some similar difficulties can arise when you want to move beyond calendar-based frequencies, months, weeks, etc. So another type of frequency would be runtime or meter-based frequencies. And these make sense for equipment that operate less than full time. For example, compressors that only run as the demand for air dictates. Also, ultrasound lubrication is a very valuable innovation, yet it's one that doesn't fit well with the frequency grouping of traditional PM and work order approaches. And now we have IIoT and smart devices on the horizon. Some say it's even closer than that. Well, the benefit is a wealth of information about the status and condition of individual components. This will be enabling and allow us to meet the specific lubrication timing and needs of each of these smart devices. But in all of these cases, lubrication tasks we needed controlled individually rather than in blocks grouped by frequency. Okay, now we'll move on to our third point, and that is some practices and technology that can actually bring consistency, accuracy, and sustainability to lubrication. Okay, one practice is actually training. So a couple of years ago, I was reading Ken Bannister's very interesting State of the Lubrication Nation report. And I was actually surprised to learn that only 12% of lube personnel are currently certified. Now, our customers tell us that such training is an important part of better lubrication practices. They also tell us a great resource for this is the International Council for Machinery Lubrication. And there's their website for you, just as a reference. Now, another enabling practice or technology is lubrication-specific equipment and practices. So what we're talking about here is modern lubricant storage, dedicated containers, enhanced sight classes, desiccant breathers, filtration, and the like. These are all key components to improved lubrication results. Now, you can find all kinds of great seminars, webinars, articles that break into these in a more detailed way. For today, I'll focus on some of the things that are a little more in my wheelhouse. Now, another key practice and technology I just summarized is getting control, right? And improved control comes when instead of dealing things with a block or a group, tasks are managed independently. So for instance, most wouldn't create a single repair order that called for the rebuild of 5 different gearboxes. You see, these 5 different gearboxes couldn't be scheduled separately. They would all have to be finished before the repair order could be closed. And when it comes to history, you wouldn't get history for the individual items. You'd have to be going and looking at history for the whole group of 5 gearboxes. So each task on each component should be tracked and managed independently, including having its own due date. And if you're trying to work with a system or an approach that doesn't have this, you're back to facing the many limitations we just identified with tasks grouped by frequency on a work order. Now, this may sound like a tall or even impossible order, but let me assure you that with today's computing power, powerful databases, tracking each of these tasks, their due dates, their completion dates, their history, is more than viable. Okay, we also talked a little bit about hybrid routes. And so in this instance, maybe we can take, this instance would be much like those 4 separate delivery lists that we converted back into a delivery route in our package express example. So similarly, multiple PMs can be combined into a hybrid route that brings optimization and efficiency to lubrication. These combined tasks can then be sequenced into a footstep efficient order that moves a technician through the geography of the equipment. Now, exactly how to show how this works is best done in my mobile computing slides. So let's head there now. So mobile computing is another great application of technology. And again, it's something that's going to simplify rather than make things more cumbersome, more difficult, more complex. So it can eliminate paperwork. It really empowers personnel for success, and especially because it gives fingertip access to the very information they needed. Also, barcode tags, RFID tags can add accuracy and accountability. And best of all, it eliminates the administrative time and work, and it also eliminates keyboard errors. I'm sure most of you have heard the term GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Well, if we're using mobile computing, the correct information gets loaded up to the device and there's no keyboard errors and thus no garbage in and thus no garbage out. Okay, so again, with the mobile computing, we can present the information that people need to see to do the work. So in this instance, we have tasks along a route that are easily navigated. And they do so by following the footstep efficient sequence of these routes. Now, this is a great segue into the hybrid routes. If you notice in this example, for some reason, sequence 1 and 3 are missing. Well, why is that? Well, that's because these sequences aren't due this week. So they represent and are just like the house with no package to deliver. The driver just simply passes on by. But what we can have is a route that is consistent, repeatable, sustainable. And hey, maybe if you have a substitute for the week, somebody might actually stand a chance of success. Now, one other thing is that past due tasks in mobile computing can be clearly highlighted in this example with a red exclamation point. And this is because the tasks are being tracked and managed individually. So if a task isn't completed or one or more tasks aren't completed on a route in the previous week, we don't have information loss. What happens is they're highlighted and presented the next week. Now, the other nice thing is for any one of the tasks on the list, we get the detailed information and they're clearly presented. Plus, once the task is completed, it's just a simple touch of the button to indicate it was done. Now, and maybe even more importantly now, is the exact date and time of the completion has been recorded by the mobile computer and is automatically uploaded into the mobile system, into the main system. Again, no garbage in, no garbage out. Now, a while back, a number of customers expressed a desire to track lubrication consumption. And it's a great way to gain new insights, and it can give insights both into your lubrication program and equipment condition as well. So in this example, it's a macro high-level trend, and it can identify which equipment is currently the most common, the most costly consumer of lubricants. And sometimes a macro trend is good as well. And in this case, we may have had a seal that's been leaking and it's been a bear to fix. Well, now I can look at the trend and see that yellow line at the far right, and we can see that this leak has actually been fixed. Now, another advantage comes if we can integrate mobile computing and consumption tracking. Then when that done button is touched, it just completely streamlines the collection of the data points needed for lubrication for consumption tracking. Okay, we're on to our last point. And these are examples of real world results, successes, and cost savings. So going back to consumption, if we're able to track consumption in detail, we can get information as to how much lubricant is being used. This comes from a specific customer that focused on managing their consumption and driving down their lubricant fluid spend. And what they were able to accomplish was between 2012 and 2016, they were able to drive their consumption and thus their costs down by over 50%. Now, here's a benefit from a customer who focused on the hybrid route technology. What can we do if we start eliminating these small patches of information that aren't really organized or sequenced for efficiency with routes, these hybrid routes, where that technology accommodates that? So this is a KPI chart, basically, and it's the compliance level. So if the lubrication tasks that are due in any given week, what percentage of them are being completed on time? So as the customer got started early in January, hey, there's cultural change, they're learning a new system, lubrication wasn't under control in the first place. But by working the hybrid route technology, working the sequences of the routes, combining different tasks onto different routes in ways that made more sense, they were able to drive their compliance from under 10% to over 90% in just 9 months. And in talking with the customer, one of the questions that Bill, one of my companion or cohorts here at the business, asked, hey, how much manpower? It's great, you've climbed this mountain, you've had a complete turnaround in compliance, but how much manpower did you have to add to this? And here's the beauty of the hybrid routes. This customer indicated that he was getting 50% increases in their lubrication technician efficiency. And they saved over $70,000 the first year alone. Now, this is an example of a company that documented the savings they gained by bringing control to lubrication. And they were pretty incredible savings. By changing to a proactive mindset that views lubrication as the foundation of reliability, they were able to reduce their maintenance cost by over 50%. And by the words of one of the directors at this company, it resulted in a healthy improvement in the bottom line and significant shareholder value. Now, these guys were great. They even calculated this down to a savings of $148 per lube point. So, how many lubrication points are in your plant? And what would a savings of $148 per lube point, what kind of impact would that have on your organization? And I'll conclude with this because I really love it, because it is a great example of the opportunity of lubrication. thanks, and I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. So if anybody has questions, this is a good time to get those in. We did have a couple already, so we'll run through these here real quick. All right, so first one up was, do you see customers setting up these types of routes for checking on assets with auto lubers on them to check that they are still functioning properly?
Hey, that's a great question. And auto lubers, in my mind, are a great idea. We saw how many tasks, would come out in a year. If we started throwing daily tasks into those metrics, those numbers would push even higher. And so if you can take a daily task and replace it with an auto luber, that's a fantastic savings in time and effort. Of course, the critical issue is then we need to make sure that auto luber doesn't run out of grease. And so, yes, setting up a task with a longer duration frequency, say 3 weeks or so, and then using that to make sure we're adding lubricant as needed is a great use of these systems. It's also a good use of consumption tracking, because if we can see over time how much lubricant we're adding, we can use that as a guide to optimize lubrication frequency.
All right,
Hope that answers
cool.
that question.
Yeah. All right. And then here's another one, kind of similar theme. What percentages of companies you deal with do you notice are doing time-based versus condition-based versus auto lube? Kind of what are you sort of seeing as the trend out there?
Sure. Well, I think the trend is moving away from the frequency or time-based, calendar-based, I should say, frequencies. Now, there's times where they're just good, steadfast, and they'll really matter. But if you have, say, some of the companies we deal with are in the building products, they have multiple lines of products, and different seasons, different products will be in demand. Also, time trends change, and different colors for different products will shift. And so the different lines will run at different times, and their calendar base just doesn't really cut it, right? We need to move to the slip my mind here, meter-based or time-based frequencies. Also, one of the reasons we're here today is more and more of our customers, it's still not a majority, but more and more of our customers are UE system customers. And they're starting to do this ultrasound-based lubrication. And, the ultimate goal is to do the lubrication and to relubricate when the equipment needs it. And ultrasound is really going to give you that answer. Hopefully that helps.
Perfect. I didn't even ask you to say that. I love it. That's good.
Well,
All
I
right.
say it because it's true.
Yeah, no, that's great. We like to hear that, and definitely some of those webinars we had earlier in the month that I mentioned at the beginning were talking about, folks that are using ultrasound for, condition-based lubrication and getting away from that, just pumping in however many shots of grease just because it's that time to do it and that's what it says how many to do. So yeah, so it's cool to hear you
And one
say
other
that.
thing, Maureen.
Yeah.
Another condition-based comes from the oil labs, right? We send samples off, and at some point, they may say, "Hey, you need to change this lubricant." Well, that's another case of condition-based lubrication. And if you've got a system that has, in 6 months we're going to do these 40 changes at this 6-month opportunity, but the lab sample comes back before that saying, "Hey, you're going to ruin this equipment if you don't change the lubricant." Well, those calendar-based frequency bound type systems are not very helpful in that regard.
Perfect. Yep. All right. So just to answer, a couple people had asked if you maybe had popped on a little later. We were recording this, so we will put this up on our website. Here just in just a little bit, so folks can take a listen to that or share it with colleagues that couldn't make it. So thank you again, Eric, for taking some time today. I'm just going to take the screen back real quick and pop through just a couple closing slides. So Eric, you had your contact info up, so here it is again in case anybody wants to reach out to you. And then of course, if you missed writing this down, you can definitely reach out to me and I can put you in touch with Eric and his team as well to answer any additional questions that might pop up once we're through here today. So just want to make note of that. And actually, this was our upcoming webinar. So next month, we're going to tackle a new topic. I think we're going to be focusing on electrical inspections. So look for an invite coming out for that here soon. And just I'll leave our conference information up. So if folks are interested in this topic of lubrication and reliability, we've kind of cover all of that at our two events that are taking place May 8 to 11 in beautiful Clearwater Beach, Florida. So make note of those and hopefully folks can join us. And with that, I guess we'll call it a wrap on Lubruary. And Eric, thanks again to you guys for presenting, and hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Thanks, Maureen. Thanks, everyone.
All right.